Welcome to She Who Speaks Abundance, the podcast for women who are ready to awaken their divine power and step into a life of true fulfillment. We're your hosts, Cheryl Andrisani and Kelly Williams, two purpose-driven women who've transformed our lives through spiritual alignment, conscious mindset work, and the power of intention. Here, abundance is more than just money. It's a mindset, it's a frequency, and it's your divine birthright. Each week, we'll share real conversations, practical tools, and spiritual wisdom to help you reclaim your worth. It's time to rise into the abundant life that you were meant to live. Let's get this party started. Welcome to the She Who Speaks Abundance podcast. I am Cheryl Andrisani and I am here with my friend Kelly Williams. And today we are going to talk about the third step in Neville Goddard's fundamental principles, which is detachment. And this is such a big step, and I think is the actual hardest step out of all of those three steps that we've already spoken about. The first one was self-observation. The second one was definition of aim. If you didn't hear the past two episodes, that's what we spoke about. And today we're going to cover detachment. And detachment, I find, is often very much misunderstood. People think that they have to let go of their attachment to their desire, and that's not actually the case. What it is, it's not giving up on your desire, but letting go of any resistance, any neediness, any effort, any anxious or worried thoughts, or any kind of obsession with trying to figure out the how and the when it will manifest. Right. So it really means releasing the old state of consciousness, the version of yourself that doesn't have what you want, and then assuming that you already have it and resting in that, knowing that your assumption is already fulfilled. Right. So, Kelly, what do you think about
Yes,
detachment? How would do you
it,
agree with that, or do you have another way of looking at it?
I agree. And it probably is the most challenging to really grasp and put into practice because we're so programmed to count. Our brains are literally computer programs that like look at possibilities and probabilities. So when you say, I want XYZ, your brain starts like running these formulas, well, you could do this. And then, for example, if you were like, I want to be a millionaire, then your brain starts being like, well, if you do a coaching business and you charge $100 a person, then you're going to need X number of people to reach a millionaire. And I mean, I know for me especially, I like numbers too. So like I'll start calculating, okay, I got to do this and then I need this many of this. So if you just release all of that, once I really learned how to drop the how and just trust, like this is what I want and I am holding my faith in that. And however it happens, it happens. It could be even better that I want than I wanted. And sometimes when it happens even better than you want, sometimes I had a lady in my group that mentioned this the other day. She was like, I've had manifestations that came out even better than I desired, but then I kind of like poo-pooed on it because I was like, well, that's not exactly how I manifested it. So as humans, we just our brains are so tricky, and if we can just go with the flow and relax and receive, then miracles truly will happen.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. I think that we want to feel like we are in control of our lives, right? And we feel like we're the ones that has to make it happen, right? We've been conditioned with that since we were kids. And so I really want to stress so much that The how your manifestation is going to come about is not your job. There is a beautiful Neville quote. Let me just see if I can find it. He says, "The moment you accept the wish as an accomplished fact, the subconscious finds means for its realization," which means that we don't have to do any of that figuring out. And I find that that is where most of our resistance comes, because our mind cannot fathom how it will be, especially if we've been living in a state of consciousness where we've never experienced that before. And
Right. And I
so,
think it's the conscious mind that that wants to figure out the how and wants to do the calculations. But when you can quiet the conscious mind and trust that when you have the desire and you plant the seed, the subconscious will be working in the background. It's a program too, that it will bring all the things in, it will calculate all the things for you, and your conscious mind can just relax.
yeah.
And once you learn how to do that, it just flows so effortlessly.
Yeah, and that really is something that we have to practice on a daily basis, because we want to be in the state of fulfillment, that it is already ours, it is already done, and that we can expect that we will receive it. And when we allow ourselves to sit in that consciousness of it already being fulfilled, well, alongside of that comes all the feelings of relaxation and enjoyment and fulfillment, right? So we want to make sure that we're no longer identifying with the state of lack. And like in step number two, which is our definition of aim, we want to detach from anything that tells us that we don't have what we've set out for ourselves, right? So it's kind of like, for me, the idea of planting a seed and then constantly digging up the seed and saying, okay, where is it? You're checking if it's growing. Well, we don't have to do that. We just expect that when we plant a seed and we nurture it and we water it, we feed it, then we can trust the process that it will show up eventually for us, right? But we got to make sure that we're not constantly infusing and nurturing our desire with doubt and anxiety and overwhelm and any type of resistance. So, Kelly, how are ways that you remain detached from the outcome? Are there any processes specifically that you use?
I think just playing with your reality, learning how to just play with your reality. And for me, um, noticing when I was so, kind of looking at different situations and noticing when I was so caught up in like, I have to have this, and like trying to figure out the how, and looking at that situation and seeing how it like did not go the way that I wanted it to go. And then other situations where I'm like, I want this thing, or I would love to like have more money or have my husband make more money, and just trust that, I'm going to be the woman that can hold more, or he's going to be the man that can hold more. And I think I mentioned, like a recent opportunity where he didn't go to his boss and say, "Oh, I want to do some side jobs." Like they just came to him and said, "Hey, you want to do the side job?" And he made a really good chunk of money just out of the blue. It wasn't anything that we were like, "Okay, well, next week we're going to go, talk to this person and then we're going to do this." And it just came out of nowhere. Like we just trusted, and we have gotten into the state now. And I think you probably are, I'm sure you're the same way. I think once you're held to a certain level, like you reach a certain level, like you're just in the state of like money just flows in.
Mhm.
There are times where I still spend money and I'm like a little triggered, like, ooh, but then I let it go and I'm like, money is always flowing back. Money is coming to me. I don't think about where it's going to come from. Like this job might pay me less this month and then something else comes along. So it's like after you practice and you get to a certain level, I guess, you've seen so many miracles and you've been held for so long that you like don't question as much anymore. But when you're starting out, the detachment, like you said, can be one of the most difficult things. And I think for newbies that are coming in, the most important thing is, and I'm learning this as well and just kind of revisiting it, is to let go of your past experiences and letting those run your program. Like, okay, growing up, we never had money. We were always broke, or my parents had to work a 9 to 5, and I have to work a 9 to 5. And like, you go to work, you make this amount of money, you retire. Like, releasing all of that and realizing the possibilities are endless. We live in a quantum reality with multiple ways that you can do things. And when you let go of the past as your goalpost of like, this is how life has to be, then you expand, you keep expanding. It might be a little bit at a time, but you expand and you expand and you expand. And then, like I said, you're kind of at the certain state of like, I'm held and I know God, the universe, whatever is holding me, God cuts my paycheck, God sends me money out of nowhere,
Mhm.
and like I don't have to worry about it. So that's kind of where I am now versus like kind of where you might start out.
Mhm.
I don't know if you have any other like really good techniques that you like to use for people who are new to this, but
Well, I mean, for me, it was definitely a practice because Neville Goddard's teachings, basically his first principle says, be still and know that I am God. And for me, I was really triggered by that at the beginning of my journey because, with all the trauma that I had experienced in life, I didn't really have the greatest relationship with God, and I didn't realize that God was my supply, right? So that has definitely taken some practice. But one thing that I did come into doing this work with was an open mind. And basically just saying, okay, I don't know if this is going to work, but I'm going to be open to trying it. Let's just see if I can just let go of that old story and start believing that, yes, I am infinitely supplied and cared for by this one, one source, divine energy, God, whatever we want to call it. And so I just played around with it and said, okay, let's see if this is actually the case. Now, you were speaking about, really being aware of the story that you were telling. So, with your money story, what was the money story that you had? And, did it match who it is that you say that you want to be? I know a lot of us, and you and I were in this boat where we believed in lack. And that was the story that we were telling. And that is the very first step of Neville's fundamentals, which is self-observation. And it's really important to observe yourself because unless you know what state of being that you're operating from, then there's absolutely no way of changing that story. So it really requires us, number one, to be highly aware of the state of consciousness that we're embodying, and then also to be aware of our mental diet. We want to make sure that we're catching ourselves whenever we slip into that state of fear and turn that story around because we don't want to live in a state of fear. We want to live in a state of abundance. And we have to make sure that the words that we speak, because I'm a true believer that our words have power. They actually cast spells over us. Somebody said that they cast spells over you. That's why they call it spelling. And I'm like, oh, yeah, that's really good. I really like that. And it's true, right? We are casting a spell over ourselves with the story that we believe to be true. And when we catch ourselves telling a story, where we're in a state of lack of whatever it is. It could be a lack of money. It could be a lack of love. A lot of people are seeking that loving relationship. It could be a lack of health. It could be a lack in your business or your career. No matter what it is, like we have to make sure that we're detaching ourselves from the stories that don't serve us and attaching us to stories that do serve us. And when we start telling the story the way that we want to, then what ends up happening is we start acting in alignment with that as well. So definitely having a good mental diet is important, like Kelly stated. Also to act as if, like that's what our imaginations are for, is like just use your imagination. How would you feel if you were, let's say, financially free, right? Instead of that story that you're struggling, how would you feel? How would you act? How would you dress? What would you do? Right? How would you show up in this world if your desire was already fulfilled? And that's super, super important. Also, releasing the how. You don't need to know the how. And when you catch yourself trying to figure out all the hows, then your job is like to just trust the process. Maybe what we can do is go over, like, let's just say I'll give you a scenario and then we can reframe it so that our story matches with how we want. Like Kelly, you just said one earlier about, spending money. Whenever you're spending money, you catch yourself. So, what kinds of things would you catch yourself saying when it came to that? Like, I can't afford it, or this is too expensive, or you gave an example, or
Yeah, or just think, I mean, I keep a certain threshold of money in my account that most people would be like, oh, why are you even worried? But you get like you level up and then you're like, okay, I want to like keep it right here. So yeah, just being like, oh, my balance is getting lower and it's not going to go up. But the funny thing is, like, we keep spending money on house remodels, and like our balance week to week is like almost the same every. I mean, we could spend like 5 grand putting a roof on a house, and then we maybe have like a couple grand less the next week, and then like it goes up again. It's just, I don't watch my bank account balance that closely. And sometimes I admit I am a little triggered. I'm like, well, if I feel like if I'm checking it every day, like I get a little bit of anxiety. So if I'm just like trust and like check it when I need to check it and not be obsessive, but it is like I do like little mental tricks like that, just just to be like, and then the next week I'll be like, oh yeah, I still have a lot of money in there.
yeah.
So it's just noticing where you are triggered. And I had another really good example. You were talking about catching yourself and self observation, because it's not money related, but I have the perfect example today where I caught myself starting to tell a story in my imagination, going where it doesn't need to go. And I was like, don't even go there. So, like, I was supposed to meet my daughter, and then I sat there for 20 minutes and she didn't show up. And then I texted her, and then I called her, and then my husband called her. And then she lives with her boyfriend. We don't have his number. So we got his number. We texted him and he wasn't answering. And then, as a mother, your mind starts going where it doesn't need to go. And I'm like, well, what if she got in a wreck on the way? What if something happened? We wouldn't even know. And then I'm like, nope, not going there. Because your thoughts are powerful. And they can become like a runaway train, if you start going down that road, that path of negativity, it can spiral you, so you have to learn that self-control. That's the mental diet part of it, of stopping it. And it comes with practice. There's times where, when you're starting out, you're like, okay, I'm going to stop going down this path, but like your mind's just like, it's gone. But you just bring it back, bring it back, bring it back. So that's what I've learned is, I when you really know, like, that the story you're telling in your head could project out, you're much more careful, like you said, about what you think and what you say. You want to speak life to yourself and other people, situations, because what you speak out into the open, could be spoken into existence. You are that powerful. And when you really know your power, you just don't blurt out anything that comes to mind.
Yeah, that's so true. Like when you said that it really is important as soon as you catch yourself to try to stop it, because what often happens is that it'll gain too much momentum, and then when you're like over the edge, it's like there is no stopping it. There's absolutely no stopping it. So you just have to kind of just let it play out until, you can calm yourself down, or until, you're distracted by something else. But what else was I going to say? Oh, I was going to say when you were talking about your, the getting the worrisome thoughts about your daughter. I mean, honestly, I think that we've been conditioned to believe that worrying about somebody is an act of love. And actually, it isn't an act of love. It actually is when you're talking about it in the energetics side of things, it's actually an attack on the people that we love the most, because now you're envisioning something bad happening to them. And if you don't catch yourself and stop yourself from that, you're actually, like going to attract that experience into your reality without even understanding that that's what you're doing. And so I think that this work, by catching myself, knowing that worrying about my kids is not the way to help them thrive. The proper way that I've realized is that I have to envision them thriving and speaking a story like they're thriving, right? And like imagining the highest versions of them and whatever it is that they want to accomplish or achieve in their own lives, seeing it as done. Like, yeah, of course, my kids are super successful, you know? Um, I did that with my son and his plumbing business. At first, I caught myself worrying because he quit the union and decided to start his own business. And I'm like, but you had a good thing. Why did you do that? Right? But that was automatically saying that, okay, if he quit the union and started his own thing, then that was implying he was going to fail or he wasn't going to do as well. So I had to catch that. And the only way you can catch that is if you're truly aware, that you're observing yourself and the story that you're telling, right? So I started telling a different story. I started seeing him thriving. I started seeing him with lots of jobs in queue. I started seeing him buying a home. These are all things that would benefit him. And if I had that version of myself, that self concept about my kids, then they would have no choice but to show up in my experience that way. So it really is about, like with money, not obsessing about the bills coming in, because that's what we tend to do. We tend to obsess about the bills. We spoke about this in previous episodes where, you become grateful for all the services that you're receiving from the companies that are giving you these bills, and switching your focus and your attention. And the same thing goes for love. I know a lot of people want to manifest their SP, their specific person, and then they are, constantly having this conversation in their mind. Is like, are they going to text me? What if they're cheating on me? What if they don't love me? What if I'm not good enough? What if it doesn't happen? We have to detach from all of those stories and instead choose to believe, like choose a higher self concept and choose to believe, no, I am loved and I am chosen. I am valuable, I am important. And it's really starting to tell that story instead, right? And so, even with health, a lot of people are focused on their, what's going wrong with their health, but we are born whole and complete, and our bodies are intelligent and know exactly what to do. But as soon as somebody gets like a symptom of something, they're Googling it and trying to act like their own doctor and worried about it. But really, the ideal is to imagine yourself in perfect health and give all of your attention to that. Do you have anything else to add to this, Kelly?
Just what you were mentioning about the children, that's so true. And one of these days, we could do an entire episode about imagining lovingly for other people, lifting people up in your mind. And again, this is the program of tearing people down in our minds, trying to control other people, worrying about the safety of other people is a program that we've been running. But when you release it, there's so much freedom for you and for them. And it is, like the SP thing. I think a lot of the problems with manifesting an SP and being hung up on a specific person, not just your specific person, but I have to have this specific person. And if they don't conform, like I'm going to go stalk them or I'm going to like manipulate them or, whatever the case may be. That's trying to control another person without changing your inner self concept. And you have to focus on you, imagine lovingly for them, right? And say, I know they're going to find, if I'm not the love of their life, they're going to find the highest and best version of themselves and find the person who's right for them, and then I will as well. And if you can do that and relax and give up that control, then it's very likely that they will turn around and be the love of your life.
Mhm.
But when you're like texting them and then like playing these little games, and I've done it too, I think we've all done it where, you're like trying to manipulate someone or be like, if they don't text me back, then I'm not going to text them back, or I'm going to like go drive by their house and see if they're really doing what they said they were doing.
I used to do
You,
that when I was dating my husband, drive by his house like a
yeah,
stalker.
like in college and high school, that's the worst. You're like, are they really where they said they would be? Like that's not good for anybody. Are you having a good time when you're doing that? I know I saw someone on one of the forums one time that I think had gotten a ticket or been arrested for stalking their SP. And they were like, well, what should I do? Should I just give up on this person? Should I keep texting them, even though they've asked me not to text and got like a restraining order? And it was funny that some of the people in the chat were like, well, you can have whatever you want, and you can manifest whatever you want. So you just keep going for it. Okay, you can go for it and believe it in your own imagination with that, but also don't be stuck on that person. But like Neville Goddard's teachings are not an open door for you to like stalk people or harass people or be like, I can have whatever I want. So like I'm gonna like act like a psychopath. And I think when you first get into this work, you do become a little like, you can become a little narcissistic and self-centered, but when you realize like what you pour into other people is what's going to come back to you, like we're so interconnected, then you realize like the more narcissistic you are, like the more you're gonna attract narcissistic people around you. So you might want to just like rethink that whole situation.
Well, it really is important to realize that everything stems from within us and that the outer reality that we're experiencing is simply a reflection of our own inner states, the states that we've been choosing, whether or not we're choosing them consciously or unconsciously. Now, I caught myself this morning as my husband and I were walking to the coffee shop. But we often do that in the morning, just go to our favorite coffee shop and sit there and enjoy. But there was, on the way back, there was a guy in a motorcycle and he was just weaving in and out of traffic. And motorcycles are really loud, so it was really hard not to notice that on the road beside us. But I caught myself saying, in my head, that is so dangerous. Now, I have experienced a couple of people who have died in motorcycle accidents. So that weighs very heavy on my mind. That's actually the very first thing that comes into, that thought comes into my experience. And I'm like, maybe I shouldn't be thinking that, right? Because what I wish for that person is for him to arrive at his destination fine, safe, right? And that's the thought that once I caught myself saying, oh, that's so dangerous, I am like, well, no. When we realize that we are actually mediating God to other people by what we are allowing ourselves to think, it really has to be in alignment with what you actually want to experience. So I had to do the work, and now that I'm aware of it, every time I see a motorcycle, I'll have to start noticing, first of all, if that my very first thought is that's so dangerous, to replacing it with the thought of, bless you, I hope that you arrive at your destination safe and sound, and all the people that you're driving around with too, you know, are safe, because that's actually what I would love to experience for other people, right? I also wanted to say that I think that gratitude is an easy way of detaching from the state of lack. And gratitude, oh, I want to say that prayer is actually gratitude in advance. This is the way that I see prayer now. So I never pray begging for something, right? And that's what a lot of people do when they pray, please God, give me this because my life sucks so bad. And I want this so that my life doesn't suck anymore. But that's again rooted in lack. So when I pray now, I don't say, please God, give me this. And we're really talking to ourselves. We're not talking to this outside God outside of us. We're speaking it into being. And usually now what I will say is basically just, thank you, Father. Thank you, in advance. I know that it's coming. I know that I shall expect it because I have claimed it in consciousness. And I know that my job is to dwell in the state that I have already received it, that it is done, that I'm choosing that state from infinite possibilities that exist for all of us. You're just choosing a state. Most of us choose states of consciousness that we don't want to experience. So it really is important of becoming aware of that and then choosing the state of the wish fulfilled. I think that detachment is basically faith in action. We have to rest in the knowing that what we have imagined is done, and not needing the physical evidence of it to believe it, right?
Right.
A lot of times people say seeing is believing, but it's actually backwards. It's believing is seeing it.
Seeing an imagination. And when you really, so imagination and faith, as you were speaking, I was thinking faith is a muscle that has to be worked. So at the beginning of the episode, I was talking about, um, how I've gotten to the point of releasing the how and like noticing, when I was had so much grip and control, I noticed things did not go my way. And then when I released that control, I saw miracles. And the more I see miracles, my muscle gets stronger. And I'm like, oh my God, like I don't have to do anything.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's when you're like in the state of joy and bliss. You're like, wow, life is actually fun.
Hmm.
And yeah, you just, and so like I said, sometimes you do get a little triggered, like spending money, or when your kid, you think something could happen to your kid, but because you've been working that muscle, that everything is always working out for you, and you can say that and really know it even when things are not looking the way you want. It could change in an instant.
Hmm.
Another good example is, I think I mentioned before, two men approached us about possibly buying our houses before they were finished. And then they said they would call us on a Saturday. And then my husband's like, hey, when do you want to meet? And they didn't answer. And then, like, I was in a shitty state anyway that day. Like, just certain things, I was like kind of in this state. And then, like, things were like showing up in, to solidify the state I was in. And then these guys weren't texting back. And I'm like, oh, I was like all happy because this might happen and we can make all this money. And then now they're not responding to us. And then I was like, this is my state. Like, them not texting and these worries that are coming up in my head are coming from my state. I bet if I changed my state, they would pop back in my reality. And so then I'm like, I'm just gonna enjoy my Saturday. Like, who cares? And then like Sunday, we popped over to the house and they were there, and the guy's like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't call. And we had a birthday party, and I'm like, see, and then like they looked at the house and they didn't call again. And then I started being like a little moment of like irritation. And I'm like, you know what? Like my house is looking so good. Like I might just want to finish it and then I can make even more money. So either way, it's going to be amazing. Like, I don't have to sit here and be like, well, this person needs to buy it, or this person could buy it, or, we're going to do this or we're going to do that, because it never really works out exactly how you plan,
Hmm.
but it always works out perfectly. Like the house that I'm living in now, there's still times where I'm like, I don't even know how we finished this house, still had extra money, paid mostly cash, bought another house at the same time. I can't sit there and crunch the numbers and say, well, I made X amount of money and then we did this and then we did that. Like we just did it
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
things just flowed. And that's when you're really in the state. And you can always bring yourself back to that when you build that faith muscle and it gets really strong. It's like when you build muscles in the gym and then you just pick up heavy things and you don't think about like, oh, well, I'm gonna have to go work my muscle out before I pick this up because I'm not strong enough yet.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, the more we practice, the better we get at it. I think that you said something really important is that we think that miracles are things that just happen, to other people or every once in a while. But really, I think miracles they should be the norm. That when we realize that we're not in control of what happens or how it will show up in our experience, but if we can rest in the knowing that it is done, and we don't put up any blocks or any resistance from being able to allow it to show up in our lives or experience it, I think that miracles are an everyday occurrence. I mean, even for me, waking up this morning to have another day, to me, that is a miracle. And when we can start normalizing the miracles in our life, like even just breathing, that is miraculous, but we take it for granted that that's just the way it is. And yeah, miracles are just the way it is as well. And another thing that you said too is like when you're having those thoughts that don't match what you actually want, when you were worrying about like why aren't these guys calling? Well, we don't realize that we are actually putting ourselves in that state of suffering, right? Whereas there is also a version of ourselves that knows that everything is going to be okay. Let's choose that state, and when we can rest in that state, well, then things will go smoother for us because we will be more relaxed instead of worried. Like we have to understand that we've been given free will to choose what state of being we occupy in every moment. We have the free will to decide how we are going to respond to all of these life experiences that show up. How do we mold and shape our lives? It's not actually the experiences that come into our lives, but rather how we respond to them. And we have to make sure that we are responding to them in alignment with what we say that we want, which was step two of Neville's Fundamentals definition of aim. Um, okay. For me, maybe a couple of examples. Number one, when you were talking about like just being detached from it, it's like there was one time where I needed to get my eaves troughs repaired. They were kind of like falling off of like the side of the roof. Like some of the nails had popped out. So there was this eaves trough that was like not even catching all the water. And we were in a season where it was raining a lot. And I thought, shit, we better get that fixed. And I'm like, don't worry, I will get to it. It will get done somehow. And then out of the blue, and I want to say it's out of the blue because that sounds more fun, but actually it's not out of the blue. We manifested it into our lives, but some guy was in the area fixing some of the roofs in our neighborhood, and he saw it as he was driving by. And I don't know what compelled him to pull into my driveway, come out of his truck, ring my doorbell, and say to me, that I don't know if you've noticed, but your eaves trough is kind of, detaching from the house, and would you like me to fix it? And I'm like, yes, please. Thank you very much. Right? He was just trying to drum up business. He was in the area anyways, and I didn't even need to go and search for anybody to go and fix it. He just showed up right at my door. And also, when my husband and I received a call to sell our business, somebody had just randomly called us again out of the blue, but nothing is out of the blue. Um, he planted the seed for us to sell our business. And, my husband and are like, okay, we're going to sell it, but who do we sell it to? And we hired a brokerage to list our business up for sale, but they weren't actually the ones that sold the business. We paid them a lot of money to list it, and because we were in a contract to sell it, we thought that they were going to do all the work to find a buyer for us. Well, it didn't end up being that way. It was somebody, a former coworker of my mother-in-law when she worked at the post office, that ended up buying our business. So we didn't even have to go searching for the buyers. The buyers were literally delivered to us, and it was so easy and such a such a smooth process of finding somebody. And they paid us exactly the amount that we were asking for the business, the number that we had in our minds that we wanted to sell it at. And they paid exactly that amount. I wish I had asked for more now that I know. But yeah, those are a couple of examples from my own life where I detached from the outcome. I didn't try to figure out how am I going to sell this? Who's going to buy it? Are we going to get the money that, we've asked for? I'm like, no, it's gonna happen. And every time I had a worrisome thought, every time I noticed I had a worrisome thought, I transmuted that thought so that I could choose a perspective that aligned with what I actually wanted, how I wanted to experience it. And so this is really an important step. And yes, it's going to take practice. We're not going for perfection because as a human being, it's hard to change habits. Habits feel like the most compelling force in the universe, but they are not. We are, right? We are. So, any last words before we hop off this call, Kelly, that you want to say to our listeners?
I mean, I think we covered the topic well, and I think the last encouragement I have is just don't give up, you know, and just come back to all the concepts and keep playing with the different options, the different tools, what works for you, and don't be so hard on yourself. Like life is just a game. We're just here to have fun. So like chill out.
Yeah,
I know it's
great
easier said than
advice.
done, but it can be fun on the way to the end goal. Like it can be
Yeah.
fun the whole time if you let it.
Yeah, great advice because honestly, we sometimes take our lives way too seriously. And, when you can start trusting that there is this invisible force that is here to help you and that wants you to have everything that you want, well, start playing with it. Have a lot of grace, like Kelly said, because, there is no condemnation in God. And what we find ourselves doing is we will judge and condemn ourselves a lot. So, when you find yourself anxious or worried or, efforting too much, then just let that go. Always bring yourself back to the wish fulfilled state. That is our part of the process to be really clear with what we want and make sure that we come from a space of fulfillment instead of lack and limitations. Okay, thank you so much, Kelly. I appreciate all of our listeners for tuning in today. I do also want to say that if you haven't subscribed to our channel, we would love to have you so that you can get notifications of when we have new episodes coming out. And also, if you have any topics that you want us to cover, please feel free to share them in the comments with us. We love you guys so much. Thank you very much for joining us, and we will talk to you again soon. Take care.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Bye.
Bye.